Hello, I am Tammy Marshall. Welcome back to my channel where I read to you parts of the books I've published so far, and in the future I'll be reading you some other things. Today I'm going to share with you the second chapter of my third book, the book about the Vietnam veteran named Marvin. This book is called Ticker Tape, and if you haven't seen the first chapter, or listen to the first chapter, I should say, please go back and listen to my introduction and then the first chapter of Ticker Tape, which is about Marvin. Today I'm going to be reading for you the second chapter, which is about Bess, his ex-wife. So I will read you the second chapter, and then I certainly hope that you like what you hear and you'll pick up a copy of Ticker Tape from Amazon and paperback or ebook. And if you happen to have a Kindle Unlimited subscription, it's also available that way. And it's in a few libraries. I'm trying to get it in more. So, Ticker Tape by Tammy Marshall. Chapter 2, which is titled Bess, Boise, Idaho, May 8th, 1985. "Carl, come help me carrying these groceries," Bess Alderson called to her husband. "In a minute," he yelled back. "I'm trying to get the picture to come in better." Bess plopped 2 bags on the counter and peered at her husband over her sunglasses. She pulled off her shades and set them next to her purse by the groceries before walking across the thick shag carpet of their sunken family room. "How many times do I have to tell you to stop fiddling with that antenna?" "Well, the damn picture is fuzzy, so what the hell do you expect me to do? I want to see their faces better." He tilted one of the rabbit ears farther north a little bit. "Aha! There! See?" He gloated as the picture clarified momentarily. As soon as he stepped away from the television set, though, the picture went fuzzy. Bess laughed as Carl cussed. "Guess you need to stand there and hold it if you expect to watch something." She took a good look at what he was watching. "What is this, anyway?" Carl gave up and eased himself into his favorite recliner. "It's that Ticker Tape parade in New York City I told you about, the one with the Vietnam vets. It's due to get underway in a few minutes. I was hoping to catch sight of a couple of buddies of mine who said they were going to march in it." Bess gave a little start at the word Vietnam, but seeing Carl lean back and begin to push the footrest out with the arms of the chair brought her back to her immediate problem. "Oh, no, you don't, mister. You come out and help me with those groceries." All right, dear." Carl rose reluctantly and then asked, "Why isn't Robbie helping you? He went to the store with you, didn't he?" She nodded as they headed to the garage. He did, but he takes after his father and makes himself scarce as soon as there's real work to be done. He had no problem helping me fill the cart with all his favorite foods, but when we pulled into the driveway and he saw his friends playing ball down the street, he was out of the car and off on his bike before I even put the car in park." She yanked open the back door, reached in, and pulled out an overflowing bag. She stepped away from the car and said, "You get the rest." She heard him mutter under his breath in his condescending, mimicking way, but she chose to ignore him this time. Instead, she called back to him as she stepped into the house. "Did you check on Chrissy while I was gone?" She heard the car door slam. "Yes, I checked on her. I'm not as incompetent as you'd like to make me out to be." Bess bit her tongue so as not to reply with what she wanted to say. Her husband followed her into the kitchen, juggling 3 full bags and a wayward loaf of bread. Laughing at the sight, she stepped forward to help him out a little, but just then a wail sounded from the back of the house. "Speak of the devil," she said as she hurried to answer her daughter's call. When she returned to the kitchen a few minutes later, carrying her freshly diapered baby girl, she scowled to find Carl fully reclined in front of the TV while the groceries, including a quart of rapidly melting ice cream, sat awaiting attention on the counter. She placed Chrissy in the playpen by Carl and instructed him to entertain her while she prepared a bottle. The hungry baby immediately started to fuss at being put down, so Carl picked her up and started bouncing her on his meaty knees. Chrissy, already a devout daddy's girl at a mere 6 months, began to giggle, her hunger momentarily abated by her father's silly faces and horsey noises. Bess put a bottle in a pan of water, set it on a burner, lit the gas, and then turned the knob to low-medium to warm up the baby's formula slowly. Then she turned her attention to putting away the perishables as quickly as possible, before she was further sidetracked. Suddenly, her organization and Chrissy's horsey ride were interrupted with Carl's surprised outburst. I'll be damned! Carl leaned forward to peer more closely at the fuzzy TV screen. Is that who I think it is? Bess stepped down into the family room, looking at the screen while reaching to steady her daughter, who seemed likely to tumble off Carl's lap at any moment. Who? She asked. By God, it is! Don't you see him, Bess? Carl rose now, holding Chrissy in one arm and pointing at the TV with his free hand. There, on the right-hand side, the guy in the wheelchair. It's Marvin. She was about to protest that there were many men in wheelchairs, but then he said her ex-husband's name, and she stopped, frozen in spot. For one brief moment, she couldn't concentrate on any of the men's faces as they were all a blur to her. But then, out of the fog, his crystallized into perfect clarity. It was only for a second, and then he was gone. But Carl was right. It was Marvin. Carl shifted Chrissy, who had begun to protest her father's lack of motion, and he began to rock her. That bottle about ready? Shaking her head to clear the image of a ruined man she'd once loved, she said, What? Oh, yeah, just a second. She hurried back to the kitchen, pulled the bottle from the pan, tested a few drops on the inside of her wrist, and carried it to Carl. It's not very warm, but she's hungry, so she'll drink it. Carl took the bottle and offered it to the grasping baby. Chrissy sank into his arms, contentedly pulling on the nipple. He shook his head. Man, I can't believe he's sobered up enough to get himself to New York for this. Bess made a nondescript sound in her throat and returned to unpacking the groceries. Man, I'm surprised I even recognized him, Carl continued from the lower area. He looks horrible. Slamming a can of peas down harder than she'd intended, Bess attempted to soften her voice before saying, Carl, please. The man's been through enough without you ridiculing him from afar. Carl halfway turned to peer at his wife over his shoulder. Then he looked down at their daughter and said, I think Mommy still has a little thing for good old Marv. What do you think, kitten? Bess closed her eyes and counted to 3. Then she turned to the pantry, her arms laden with canned goods. You know better than that, Carl, and you know how I feel about people disparaging our veterans, whether that vet is my ex-husband or not, and whether that vet is an alcoholic or not. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, Carl said, just loud enough for her to hear it over the TV. Caught me off guard seeing him there, that's all. She folded up the paper bags to be reused for Robbie's art projects. Me too. She wandered down to the TV area and took Chrissy from Carl. As she stood bouncing the sated girl, she rubbed her back and patted it, hoping to elicit a burp while she watched the parade with Carl. Currently, the able-bodied veterans were marching past as thousands of spectators thronged the sidewalks and yelled blessings at them as they passed. She found herself thinking, if only America had responded this way when Marvin returned, maybe he wouldn't have turned to a different type of bottle to soothe himself. Maybe his wife would have been enough to heal his internal wounds, since nothing could be done to fix his external ones. Maybe then things would have been different for them. Looking down at Chrissy and around the toy-strewn room, she sighed. If she still had Marvin, then she wouldn't have her 2 children, whom she adored. But then she'd have Marvin. And inside she knew she still loved him, and always would. The problem was that Marvin, the Marvin she had married and waited for during the long years of his 2 tours of duty and his time as a POW, didn't return from that horrible war. A shell-shocked, mutilated, and angry Marvin returned in his stead. A Marvin with a secret that didn't stay buried, and another secret that had driven Bess away. Thank you for joining me today. I hope to see you again. Happy reading, everybody.